Aaron, who are you? Tell me a little bit about what FreePlay is. Let's kind of talk about it so our listeners kind of know
Yeah.
what we're getting into here.
Yeah. So, quick background on me. I grew up on the Oregon coast, a little town of 10,000 people. I loved playing sports growing up. That was the way that I made friends. It's like me and my teammates, we'd do everything together. We'd practice, we'd play, and then we'd play a lot more after practice. So, for me, that was the way that I got exercise, was through sports. And then even going to college at BYU, I made my friends through intramural sports there. And so I think for me, I hit this. There was kind of a shock when I got into the workforce, and all of a sudden I was in a cubicle all day, and like the way that I used to hang out with all my friends was, for some reason, when you become an adult, like fitness becomes running on a treadmill and taking fitness classes and stuff that I didn't really understand or enjoy. And so I created FreePlay really as a way to make it easy for friends to exercise together, but not just like exercise, like hack exercise, where you're just playing, you're just doing something fun. Yeah, play. And it's exercise is just a byproduct of that. That was the original intent of FreePlay. I started it as a side hustle in 2016, and then we did kind of I would say like our public launch April 2017, and have been going at it ever since. So basically what the app started as, and we've evolved it quite a bit, but it started as a universal pass to all of like the coolest fitness facilities in the state of Utah. So with one pass, you could go to the trampoline park, you could go to the rock climbing gym, you could go to a rec center, and you could also go to like little boutique fitness studios as well. And we made it really easy for you to team up with friends and then go and exercise and schedule your exercise together. So that's that's the quick and dirty version.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of evolved to a point where, like, basically, the way I look at FreePlay, it's like a gym membership to like every gym in Utah, in a way,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So you have guest passes that I literally can go. There's a gym down the street or a trampoline park, and I want to do that for exercise instead of going to my normal Vaso or my Anytime Fitness. I literally can pull up my FreePlay app. I'll show a code. They'll beep it at the gate, and then
Yep.
I can go and experience that gym that day. Right?
Yep, exactly. Yep. And you can coordinate doing that with all your friends as well.
And I think it's a super, super cool concept. I had been on FreePlay for a really long time and got to do a ton of small gyms and got to experience a ton of things that I normally wouldn't get to, like kickboxing or rock climbing, just because of it. And it's super funny because now I find these conversations too as I get more into golf, where I'm like, man, I need like the FreePlay for golf so I can have just like one pass, like go do all these different things. And so the concept of, having consolidating everything in one place is just super cool and super helpful, and you get to try out so many more things. So if you haven't checked out FreePlay, you definitely should, especially if you're in Utah. But to back up a little bit, Aaron, tell us a little bit about your background before FreePlay. Like what were you doing in terms of, were you going to school? Were you working? Did you have any technical background at all?
When I grew up in Oregon, my parents actually had a gym. And because it was a small town, that was kind of the place where everyone hung out, So like after school, if I didn't have practice, I just walk over to the gym, and then I would, shoot some hoops or go for a swim or whatever.
You were the cool kid in your town because you had the gym. Is that what it is?
I threw the dopest parties, no doubt. Yeah. No, it was a blast. It's actually really weird for me to pay for like a gym membership today, because I'm like, it's been free my whole life before before I became an adult.
So what I'm saying is, Aaron, you didn't want to grow up as an adult. Really, that's what I'm
no. Do any of us, like?
No,
let's be honest.
We just get fat and bald. I mean,
no.
Yeah,
I know, and you just sit at a desk all day and do things that are totally inconsequential. So, no, I'm still a kid at heart, for sure.
Yeah. So back to your background. I mean, are you a developer? Did you get a background in
so
marketing, sales?
Yeah, I graduated in marketing at BYU, and then I took a job right out of college at a company called Landesk. And it was as boring as it sounds, as the name sounds, but um, it was basically like really high tech IT software. And I remember my first day there. I was sitting in meetings with like a bunch of engineers who I'd never like talked to engineers in my life before. I didn't actually know that they existed. I thought they were just theoretical. And so
So did they.
Yeah,
yeah,
seriously.
yeah.
They're like, what are you? You're not human. We don't want to talk to you.
So I remember sitting in this meeting, and I kid you not, I understood maybe like 10% of what they were saying. Like
Yep.
they were
Welcome to
using
my
all
world.
these acronyms and all of these like terms that I had never for the life of me heard before. And I remember I went home that day to my wife, and I was like, I can't do this job. Like I this is like a foreign language to me. I don't know how I'm gonna ever be successful here. So anyway, I stuck it out for a few months, and I got into product management while I was there. And I started to really fall in love with this idea of like building products and taking feedback from customers, and hearing their problems and then translating that into like a product solution. And so
Mhm.
I actually had the privilege while I was there to basically run this disruptive cloud initiative that was under the direction of the CEO, and was a really fun project, considering like the technology that we were using and working on. It was a really fun project. And then I took those skills over to Domo about 2.5 years later, and I ran a couple product teams at Domo for a couple years as well. And so I think like product management is my background, and
Got it.
even still today, I do a lot of consulting on new product development and new product management for like bigger companies like Twitter, Sony, ADT,
Hmm.
Bain, like really big companies that are building these disruptive products. And that's really what my passion is building businesses, building products.
That's super cool. I didn't realize how involved you were, I would say, in the project management piece, just because I would say a lot of people listening to this don't typically have that exposure. A lot of people who listen to this are completely new with just marketing and just sales.
Hmm.
And to go in and build a team of engineers to come out with a new product is no easy task. Just like you
No.
said, originally, when you walked into a room of engineers initially, it was like, holy crap, like what is going on? And then through the experience, you were able to gain a lot of knowledge, and what seems like apply that to this new product, FreePlay, and that is starting to make a lot of sense to me now.
Yeah.
Just because going and doing that is super tough, but when you have those skills, it definitely makes things a little bit easier for sure.
Yeah, and I think
So
I'm somebody that learns by doing. Like
yeah,
I hate sitting and kind of theorizing about stuff. For me, it's like let's just go build something and see if it works and see what
yeah.
happens. So
Man, hold on. Rewind, replay what he just said. Like seriously, and it's so funny because people can think all day about an idea and think it's a great idea, but go
mhm,
do it, right?
yeah,
Just, and I mean, if there's one thing anybody can get from even listening to this episode or anything, just go freaking just start something, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit because how did you start? Because what it sounds like is you kind of started as something a little bit different. I'm guessing there was probably no technology and it was more of like you said, this side hustle. Tell us a little bit about like the start and what
Yeah,
you
so you
did to.
you were at Domo, right? So you were at Domo
Yeah,
when this happened, and you're just like, cool, I'm gonna start a side business. Did you just like start coding? Like what happened?
yeah. Well, so Domo in American Fork, Utah, they feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or they did at the time. I don't know if they still do. Um, and so I put on like 15 pounds within 3 months of working there because I was just pigging out, And it was good food too. Like, yeah.
A
So
lot of cubbies.
a lot of
Welcome
cup,
to
and
tech,
and
everybody.
they brought those little like cookie sandwiches. Have you had those at the whoopie pies or whatever they're called?
Yes, unfortunately. Well, I mean, look at me. Do I look like I've had those? Yes, yes, I have had them.
Yeah. So they had those like just piles of them, like, to the point where you felt bad if you didn't eat them because they were going to get thrown out. So um,
You did your part. I understand
that's
that.
right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I remember like sitting at my desk one day and I looked down and I like noticed this muffin top, and I had never, that was new to me. I was like, man, I need to get into shape. So I was like, okay, well, I don't think I want to go get a gym membership. I really just want to go like shoot hoops with my buddies. Maybe I'll just build something that helps us do that. And so I got an engineering friend of mine that I had worked with at Landesk to I talked him into to building it for me, and I did all of the initial design. I'm not proud of those initial design concepts or anything, but yeah, that's kind of how we got started, and we just worked on it on the side for a little while, and then October of 2018 is when I jumped on full time to do FreePlay.
So let's talk about this friend. Were you
Yeah,
guys?
that conversation, I'm super curious to see, was it just like a here, like I have this idea, here's a piece of equity, or because I feel like those conversations now, especially now in 2020 and
Yeah.
2021, those conversations are a lot harder. So I think for our listeners, it'd be super interesting to hear about how that conversation went.
Yeah, well, the first thing is like those conversations always need to happen over food. Um, like if you want to get an engineer to listen to you, then say, "Hey, let me buy you lunch," right? And that's usually enough. So I said, "Hey, let me take you out to lunch. I have this idea," and this is me. Like I'm more of a nerd than I've ever been before because I just work with engineers all day. So
I
I'm
know.
not. I'm poking some fun at them, but I'm one of them now. Um, but yeah, so I just took him out to lunch. I said, "Hey, what are you doing in your free time? Because I have this really interesting idea." And he's like, "Well, nothing much. Tell me your idea." So I pitched it to him, and he's like, "Cool, let's do it." And
Cool.
He's like, lunch is on you, right? Then let's
yeah,
do it.
yeah, exactly. And so I was like, "All right, well, we'll figure out, like the equity split and all that." And but that was all kind of secondary. Like for us, it's all about the work. It's all about the product and building.
Hmm.
And so I had come up with some concepts already and kind of put them in front of them, and we just got to work. So honestly, it was a pretty easy conversation to have, but primarily
Hmm.
because I had worked with him quite a bit before, so we
Got
had a
it.
good working relationship.
And that's a super good point. And I really want to point this out because this is the difference between a product actually having success and a product not, from what I've seen. So when
Yeah,
you're going and initially finding an engineer and you're just paying them and they're not passionate about your project, there is very, very little chance of any success or really that project going anywhere.
yeah,
When you're bringing on your initial developer, like it's a big deal. Like technical debt is a real thing for a lot of people. And if they're not passionate about it, you shouldn't be bringing them on. And I think that's one big reason, even at Strides, like we have the process the way it is. Like it's super important for us and our entire team to be bought into your project and know that it's going to go somewhere, and the person leading it is able to drive it. So when you're going and finding that first developer, make sure that they are passionate about what you're doing and are really bought in on it, because
yeah.
that makes things just 100 miles easier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is like if you haven't had an opportunity to work with that person before, then be very meticulous about, who you get into business with, because this is something that I have learned the hard way with free play is like if you aren't really careful about who you bring on as early employees, it can really backfire on you. Even if you get along, but if like the paths are different, like they want like a good lifestyle that is 9 to 5, and you want like you're trying to like scrap your way to product market fit. You have to like get to a good level of relationship with that person before you really start to get into business with them.
So that developer that you brought on, how long was he building it for?
Yeah,
Is
so
he,
he
is he
built
still
it.
is he in the other room right now, still developing for you?
No, no, I love the guy. One of my favorite people. He's actually like the same age as my dad. What happened is we got to a point where it was a side hustle for, like I mentioned, about 2 years, and then well, no, sorry, it was about a year and some change, and then it got to a point where it was like, okay, this is working, like we're getting customers, people are signing up, we've got to move full time on it. And he was at a point in his life where he's like, looking more towards retirement and needed a
Mm.
steady job and stuff. And so I had a hard conversation with him, and we just decided it was best to part ways with what he had built so far, and then we went and found another developer to help us out.
Was he being compensated? Were either of you guys being compensated at this point? I mean, still a side
No,
hustle.
just a side hustle, yeah. So it was all sweat equity. I actually still don't take a paycheck. I have a little bit of consulting work that I do that pays my bills, but yeah. So he ended up never taking a paycheck from us.
Mm. And that's a super good point. I think just in general, like as you're going and starting a business, like I think a lot of people just try and jump all the way in without any thought of like how they're going to take care of themselves, or
Yep.
it's just like, hey, I got this lump of money, like I want to go build this, but like again, you spent 2 years on this, working on this product before like really diving all the way in on it, and even now you still aren't taking a paycheck, and so
Yeah.
like create like a side hustle is a side hustle, and it does take time before you can jump all the way in and start actually making money, versus like it's never as easy as just building something and getting it done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want to kind of jump into that validation piece that you guys had. So there's this timeline between you jumping all the way in. Like at what point did you guys actually start seeing revenue, and what did you build? How minimal was your product at the time?
It was minimal. Like barely worked, kind of minimal. But this is advice I would give to anyone who's starting their own app. Is we are way past the point in time where you can just like launch a new product and then people adopt it. And that's kind of what, like when I first launched FreePlay, I was like, oh, sweet, we got the product. I'm just going to post to Facebook and then everyone's going to download it and we'll be millionaires, But
Yeah.
just as important, if not more important, I might actually say this is more important, is you have your product, but then figuring out your distribution is I think in my opinion is more important than your product. And so you have to put thought into like, what is my go-to-market strategy? What's my strategy to get traction on this new product? And what channels am I going to leverage to bring people to my platform? Because when you're starting
Yeah.
out, like you have no audience at all, right? You have just your own personal audience. And so building an audience takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And a lot of times has to be kind of thought through as you're developing your product, because it changes the way that you price your product. It changes the way that you think about like how you monetize it, right? If you are going to do a freemium product or going to do a free trial, or if it's just going to be paid forever, all of that has to
Mm-hmm.
be considered before you really have a business.
So validation overall, right? You have to validate kind of who the market is, how to get to them, what to reach them. A lot of that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I think so. And it's hard to validate when you don't have a product yet, but I think just like having distribution channels in mind, and having relationships built in those distribution channels, I think is really valuable.
Yeah, and especially because like right now we talk to a lot of people who are like, hey, what I want to do is invest, $20,000 or $50,000 into this like MVP, and it's like it's super cool that you want to do that, but what are your plans for marketing? It's like you should be spending like double on figuring out who you're targeting, what your brand is before even going into development. What are your email lists? What is your go to market strategy? And everybody tries to, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people try and wait till the very end before actually
Yeah.
thinking about those things. And so that's super interesting.
This happens to me all the time because I get people that pitch me their product or like show me their product all the time. And a lot of times what I see is I'll see founders that like have invested enormous amounts of money into an app. We're talking like their life savings, like 50,
Mm-hmm.
100,000, sometimes more than that, into building and developing this app. And they don't have any customers, right? And they're showing me the app, and it's like it does all of this stuff, but behind it, I'm like, who's using this? There's nobody using it, so your product doesn't have any value. Like literally, there's no value to your software product until you have users. And then those people a lot of times are still talking about the product, right? It's like, this is what
Mm-hmm.
we're going to do, and we're going to be the next Uber, we're going to be the next Airbnb. No, you're not, because you don't understand that those founders, like, Travis and Chesky, like when they were early on in their businesses, they were not thinking about the product. They were thinking about like, how do I go get my next customer? How do I go get my next driver or my next host on Airbnb, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those have to be the things that are top of mind for an early entrepreneur who's just dipping their toe in this water.
That's such good advice. Such good advice.